The General Insurance presents Ordering a Sandwich with Shaq and Hall of Fame announcer Michael Buffer.
I'm going to have roast beef. What do you want, Michael?
Let's get ready for pastrami on rye.
Turns out, Michael Buffer talks like that all the time. And it turns out, The General is a quality insurance company that's been saving people money for nearly 60 years.
Spicy Dijon mustard.
For a great low rate and nearly 60 years of quality coverage, make the right call and go with The General.
Some restrictions apply.
From the Christian Research Institute in Charlotte, North Carolina, this is the Bible Answer Man broadcast with Hank Hanegraaff. We're on the air because truth matters and life matters more. On today's special edition of the Bible Answer Man broadcast, we present a previously recorded episode of the Hank Unplugged podcast. Hank's guest is J. Warner Wallace, author of the new book, Person of Interest: Why Jesus Still Matters in a World That Rejects the Bible. Here now is Hank Hanegraaff.
Thank you very much, Randy. This is a very special week of broadcasts. I'm so excited to introduce it in this segment. We're going to be talking about why Jesus still matters in a world that rejects the historic Christian faith, a world that rejects the Bible. And we're going to be talking about why Jesus really matters in this kind of a context with J. Warner Wallace. And as the basis for our conversation, we're going to be talking about his book, a brand new book titled Person of Interest: Why Jesus Still Matters in a World That Rejects the Bible. This book available for everyone who stands shoulder to shoulder with me in the battle for life and truth. You can get your copy on the web at equip.org, or as always, you can write me at Box 8500, Charlotte, North Carolina, zip code 28271. Jesus is most certainly a person of interest. He is indeed none other than God in human flesh. And if he is the unique superstar of all of recorded history, we ought to spend some time considering the significance of the superstar of all of history in a world that denigrates him. And I'm not just talking, when I talk about Jesus Christ, about a momentary star, but rather the superstar. Many of you know that I like to play golf, and in golf, there are lots of stars. But there's only a few that warrant the moniker superstar. If you know anything about golf, you'll recognize the name Jack and Arnie and Tiger. They are so famous that their last names are completely unnecessary. If you're a basketball person, well, the NBA also has a plethora of stars, but only one Michael Jordan. From a historical perspective, there are also superstars. We think of Alexander the Great, or Aristotle, or Augustine. But they lit the earth for a brief moment and have long disintegrated into dust. And so only one superstar endures, one for whom there is no measure. He spoke, and a universe of numberless stars leapt into existence. Morning stars together proclaimed his holy birth. On one day he will flash across the eastern sky in an epic return to the planet he saved. He's the root, the offspring of David. He's the bright morning star. And where there are stars in the constellation of biblical prophecy, there is only one enduring superstar. Little wonder then that prophecies concerning him outnumber all others. Think about this for a moment. His ancestry was marked his birthplace foretold. Circumstances surrounding his death were prophesied before crucifixion had even been invented. The date of his visitation was what was predicted within narrow time parameters. He would work extraordinary miracles. He would fulfill the law and the prophets. And it would be too small for him to bring back only those of Israel, and therefore he would be a light to the Gentiles as well, so that salvation could go out to the ends of the earth. Only the hand of God could have etched a prophetic portrait of Christ in the Old Testament, and only God could cause it to take on flesh in the New. Only Jesus of Nazareth, the unique superstar, could emerge through the doorway of Old Testament prophecy. Think about the significance of Christ who fulfills the law and the prophets. Christ who did what no one else in the history of humanity could ever do. He could lay down his life and then take it up again, demonstrating that he indeed is God. And today, although he is so often trivialized, we must remember that he dominates the bookshelves, that no one in the history of film has inspired so much in the motion picture industry. Think of the Jesus film. It's the most watched motion picture in the history of the human race. Or think about his impact on art. It's unsurpassed. His impact on music is likewise without precedent, including the fact that most musical greats, almost all of them, have recorded at least a song about Jesus. That from Hank Williams to John Lennon. I'm not just talking about people who were Christians, but he's influenced music across the board. Again, this is why J. Warner Wallace, in his book Person of Interest, says that Jesus Christ really matters. And I think it's so important to highlight this, and we're going to do that all this week. Again, the book Person of Interest, available to all of you who stand shoulder to shoulder with me in the battle for life and truth. You can get your copy on the web at equip.org. I also want to take just a moment at the onset of a week's worth of broadcast to talk about the Christian Research Journal. As many of you know, it is our flagship magazine. We have a brand new issue out, and if you're not subscribing, go to the web at equip.org and find out how you can remedy that woeful circumstance. In the current edition of the Christian Research Journal, we're focused on the church which is the ground and the pillar of truth. And so I want you to read this particular issue. Again, you can get it on the web at equip.org. The focus on the church is precisely where our focus ought to be, because the church, as St. Paul makes plain, is the pillar and ground of truth. Now, thus, to have a proper perspective on the church has ramifications not only for your present life, but also for the life that is to come. As St. Cyprian wisely proffered, no one can have God for his father who does not have the church for his mother. That ought to be a self-evident truth, because it is through the church that God's saving power is mediated to the whole of humanity. Christianity, as I said many times on this broadcast, knows nothing of Lone Ranger Christians. And therefore, to be baptized is to be born anew into a body of which Christ is the head. Again, this particular issue of the Christian Research Journal devoted to the notion of the church, and there are many permutations of that. I mean, what about the Pope? Is he infallible? There's an article on that in this edition of the Christian Research Journal. What about Christ and his bride, the church? Does your pastor's gender matter? Is that up for debate? Again, dealt with in this issue of the Christian Research Journal, and so much more. Subscribe today at equip.org. And as we go to break, and after the break, I'm going to be introducing J. Warner Wallace. But as we go to break, once again, do consider standing shoulder to shoulder with me in the battle for life and truth. It's only through those who do that that our voice is heard, not only right here in America, but around the world. So you have a little bit of a homework assignment. When I go to break, go to the web at equip.org, see how you can subscribe to the Christian Research Journal and get a copy of Person of Interest. We'll be right back.
Can the truth about Jesus be uncovered, even without a body or a crime scene? Join cold case detective J. Warner Wallace as he investigates Jesus using an innovative and unique approach he employs to solve real missing person murder cases. In Person of Interest, Wallace carefully sifts through the evidence from history alone without relying on the New Testament. You'll understand like never before how Jesus, the most significant person in history, changed the world. To receive your copy of Person of Interest, Why Jesus Still Matters in a World That Rejects the Bible, call 888-7000-CRI and make a gift to support the Christian Research Institute's mind-shaping, life-changing outreaches. 888-7000-CRI, or just visit us at equip.org. That's equip.org. We'll be back in just a moment with more from Hank Hanegraaff. The number of wolves surrounding the Christian flock is growing, and they relish nothing more than docile sheep utterly incapable of defending themselves. From militant secularists at home to militant Islamists abroad, the assaults on biblical Christianity are growing dangerously. But Christian Research Institute support team members aren't in favor of feeding these wolves. Instead, each day they're making possible an array of outreaches that defang these wolf packs with solid arguments and evidence that have stood the test of time. What's more, support team members are equipping themselves with CRI's Equipping Essentials, a hand-picked collection of the best apologetics tools around. Your selection of resources, along with a complimentary subscription to the Christian Research Journal, are just our way of saying thanks. To learn more about the benefits of membership, simply visit equip.org. Once again, that's equip.org. The Complete Bible Answer Book Collector's Edition, revised and updated, is a comprehensive collection of the most often asked as well as most difficult questions Hank Hanegraaff has received in nearly 3 decades of hosting the Bible Answer Man broadcast. This expanded edition contains new entries, leading readers to a better understanding of God and our relationship to Him in Jesus Christ. The Complete Bible Answer Book Collector's Edition, revised and updated, is a comprehensive, handy, and attractive volume that you will return to again and again. Take your exploration of God's Word to new heights and receive the revised and updated Complete Bible Answer Book as our thank you for your gift by calling 888-7000-CRI and make a gift to support the Christian Research Institute's life-changing outreaches. 888-7000-CRI or visit equip.org.
Truth Matters, Life Matters More details Hank Hanegraaff's personal pilgrimage from his long defense of truth to his discovery that life matters more. Essentially 2 books in one, Part 1 equips Christians to defend the essential truths of the historic Christian faith. Part 2 explains why truth is necessary but hardly sufficient. That the map is not the territory, the menu is not the meal. We are created to experience life to the full through union with God in Christ. Is there more to the Christian life than what you are experiencing? Truth Matters, Life Matters More unveils the unexpected beauty of an authentic Christian life. To receive Truth Matters, Life Matters More for yourself or as a terrific gift to a friend or loved one, call 888-7000-CRI and make a gift to support the Christian Research Institute's life-changing outreaches, 888-7000-CRI, or visit us online at equip.org.
Let's return to your host, Hank Hanegraaff.
Thank you so much, Randy. I am so excited about introducing my guest for this week's worth of broadcasts. He, again, is the author of Person of Interest, Why Jesus Still Matters in a World That Rejects the Bible. His name, J. Warner Wallace. As I said before we went to break, get a hold of this book. It's available for all of you who stand shoulder to shoulder with me in the battle for life and truth. J. Warner Wallace is a cold case homicide detective. He's a senior fellow at the Colson Center for Christian Worldview. He's also an adjunct professor of apologetics at Talbot School of Theology. I'm talking about Biola University. A couple of my kids went there. And, he has received national recognition for his work. Some of you may know him through other venues. His cases have been featured, I think, more than any other detective on NBC's Dateline, for example, and his work has also appeared on programs like Court TV and Fox News. He has been awarded the Police and Fire Medal of Valor. That's quite an honor. And he has written some of the great books on apologetics that are available in the Christian world today. I'll talk about that in just a moment, but let me just mention before I do that just how significant apologetics is. We say we are an apologetics ministry, and that means that we are always ready to give a defense for the faith, and that's not just something that an institution should do, that's something that everyone should do. So it's not just a nicety, it's a necessity for every believer. And that's why the Apostle Peter admonished believers to always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. And then, of course, do that with gentleness and with respect. And St. Paul vigorously defended the gospel. He didn't just do it himself. He charged his understudy, Timothy, and Titus as well, to do what he was doing, defend the faith. Because apologetics is necessary for the preservation of the faith. And that's why you have Paul saying to Timothy, preach the word, be prepared in season and out of season, correct, rebuke, encourage with great patience and careful instruction. Why? Because the time is going to come when men will not put up with sound doctrine, and that time has most certainly come in our own epoch. They're going to turn their ears away from truth and turn aside to myths. So defending essential Christian doctrine against perversion, against myth concocted by pseudo-Christian cults, is a crucial task of every Christian. Apologetics, it's also necessary for the cultural relevance of the church because we live in a post-Christian society, a society in which theism is no longer in vogue, a society in which belief in the possibility of miracles is viewed as, simple-minded superstition. And therefore, we as defenders of the faith create intellectual room for the very acceptance of the gospel. In place of merely pontificating dogmatic assertions, Christian apologists, and that means you, are commanded to provide defensible arguments, again with gentleness and with respect. And we do that not only to win people to Christ, it's not only pre-evangelism, but it's also post-evangelism. all of us will have the winds and waves of doubt beat upon the pillars of our faith. But we can stand strong if we know that God created the universe, that Jesus Christ is God, demonstrated that he was God through the immutable fact of resurrection, and that the Bible is divine, as opposed to being merely human in origin. Well, my guest, once again, is a fantastic author. He wrote a book titled Cold Case Christianity, another book, God's Crime Scene. You can find both of them, by the way, on the web at equip.org. And then the book that we're going to feature all this week, Person of Interest, Why Jesus Still Matters in a World That Rejects the Bible. Person of Interest is a book that you need to read. It's a book that is illustrated by J. Warner Wallace himself. And with that, welcome to the podcast.
Wow, thanks so much for having me. You're absolutely right about it being a pre-evangelism. I mean, we talk about how, as an evangelism strategy or an approach, I hear so many people who would say, well, what you just need to do is you just need to be more like Jesus. You need to model Jesus for people around you. The best testimony you're ever going to have is your own personal testimony of your life. And all that's true. But a lot of that, if that's the case, well, then we should all become Mormons, I guess, because it seems to me that people who are in a works-based system are far more likely to work hard and look great. And so their testimony of their lived lives are usually powerful. But for me, it was testimony of your lived life that was powerful. I told you when I first was examining all of this evidence, the stuff I write about in this book as well, I was stuck in a surveillance vehicle because I was working on a surveillance team, and I was stuck without any media back in those days. All you had was your AM and FM radio, right? So I remember every day at 3 o'clock in Los Angeles, the Bible Answer Man would come on. And yes, it was the facts, the defense of the gospel, that was really important. I was listening to that and kind of, weighing the options, weighing all the evidence. But also it was this idea of modeling an intelligent, thoughtful, interactive faith, because I wasn't seeing that in the people who I was meeting on the job who would say they were Christians. Even though they were good case makers as detectives, they weren't good defenders of their Christian beliefs, to the point where it was like, well, really, I'm surprised that they can't do this better. Like they don't have the same value for making a case in their spiritual life that they would have in their material life, right? So you provided for me an example of, okay, this is what this looks like. If you are thoughtful, if you do consider evidence important, this is what this looks and sounds like. And that, I think, is an important part of the evangelism process as well.
Yeah, I want to get back to you sitting in a squad car, you being a cold case detective, and at the same time, someone who's an atheist, who finally ends up in a church. You hear someone say that Jesus is the most important person in history, the smartest person in history, and so forth. And that intrigued you to the point of examining who Jesus Christ is, examining whether the Bible really has relevance in an age of scientific enlightenment.
Yeah, it did. Because I think prideful people are often prideful enough to think that they're smart. And when someone provokes you and says, well, there's somebody out there who's smarter than you, you think, well, really? I was very interested in the fortune cookie version of Jesus. The same way, when I was in high school, I had a sociology teacher who was a very active Baha'i. And he said, Baha'u'llah wrote a lot of really interesting things. He's a really smart guy. You should read his writings. So, yeah, I bought it. I didn't think anything of it. I just ignored the claims to being a manifestation of God. I ignored all that. I was just looking to mine out. Like, look, if you've got an ancient sage whose wisdom has survived the ages, then probably there's something in this that, just from an evolutionary process, would be worth looking at, right? Because this is wisdom that has survived this evolutionary process I thought we were all on. So I was interested in Jesus that way. Like, what's so smart about Jesus? And as you read through this, you think, wow, there's a lot of cultural expressions that seem to have been rooted in the teaching of Jesus. And so you can kind of see, okay, fine. But then I became more and more engaged in the nature of the narrative. So I'm reading through the narratives to mine out the red letters, and then I'm realizing, this is actually has the texture, especially when I saw what people would typically today call a contradiction. I knew better than that. I knew that eyewitness testimony always has some level of variation between each account. And I saw that in the Gospels, and I thought, what, I'm going to test these and see if they hold up. That's what really started the whole process. But yeah, it started with, what's in it for me? Well, the wisdom of Jesus is in it for me, so I'm willing to look at this only because, I was prideful and selfish enough that intrigued me.
I kind of want to let the audience know what a cold case detective is. Maybe there are a lot of people listening in that really don't know what that describes.
So basically, not every case can go cold because most cases will close after a certain number of years because it seems like it's too prejudicial against a potential suspect. If we let this thing stay open for 25 years, how are you going to find your own witnesses to defend yourself? So almost every crime has what they call a statute of limitations. You know, if it's a burglary or a robbery or property crimes, even some lower level assaults. But when you get to murder, those things don't have a statute of limitations. So when those don't get solved, they go cold, they still are available to work. And usually you have families who always want to know what happened to my sister, what happened to my mom. So you have usually interest within the family that keeps them calling you. And I had a bunch of these. I was working robbery homicide, and we were, at some point, we got a new sergeant who was very ambitious, and he said, we should try to solve some of these cold cases. And all of us on the team were like, really? We're bombed with all the fresh cases. Do we really want to add something that everyone's forgotten about 25 years ago? Can we just let that be? And let's just work on the ones we don't want these to go cold, do we?
Well, we've run out of time for today's special edition of the Bible Answer Man broadcast. Be sure to tune in again next time when we'll continue Hank Hanegraaff's conversation with J. Warner Wallace. Our firm commitment here at the Christian Research Institute is to defend the faith once for all delivered to the saints and to equip believers to become true disciples of Jesus Christ. In appreciation for your crucial gift to help strengthen and expand CRI's mind-shaping, life-changing outreaches, Hank would like to send you J. Warner Wallace's new book, Person of Interest: Why Jesus Still Matters in a World That Rejects the Bible. Call a resource consultant at 888-7000-CRI, 888-7000-CRI, or visit our website, equip.org. Once again, that's equip.org. You can also write CRI at Post Office Box 8500, Charlotte, North Carolina, zip code 28271. The Bible Answer Man broadcast is funded by listeners like you. We're on the air because truth matters and life matters more. Bertrand Russell famously said, "Most people would rather die than think," and many of them do. Not so with CRI support team members. Support team members are not only serious thinkers, but their membership in CRI's support team helps to equip hundreds of thousands of fellow believers around the globe each and every month. Are you not a member? Then you're missing out. Not only do support team members form the backbone of Christian Research Institute's outreaches, but they enjoy their selection of resources from our Equipping Essentials library and receive a complimentary subscription to CRI's award-winning Christian Research Journal. Just two of the benefits of membership. To discover how you can make a difference 24/7 in equipping believers at home and abroad to stand for life and truth, check out the benefits of membership at equip.org.
It's a fact. All cars will eventually break down. If you have CarShield, you can protect yourself from the high cost of auto repairs. And they're America's #1 auto protection company. Your transmission, engine, and car's computer system are all covered. Get the ultimate vehicle service protection. Call CarShield now at 800-440-5931. That's 800-440-5931.
It's clear to you that de-icing the wings will not be done in a jiffy. You look for phone outlets but see none, only photos of phone outlets. A voice announces your gate is now 39C, 12B, 9A. It's like musical chairs if musical chairs made you sob in the pet relief area. A child picking his nose stares. His parents have abandoned him. The airport will raise him now.
Don't let flight delays ruin your vacation. Go on a real vacation. Go RVing.